and welcome back to another episode of Why I Love BNI, your podcast spotlighting different members and different chapters on what they love about their business, being a part of the BNI family, and how has BNI helped them in their business. So today I'm super excited to have my guest Kendall with us today. Kendall, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Macy. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Of course. Well, you and I connected, I want to say a few weeks ago. But we had a really great phone call, just kind of learning about what we're doing with each other. So I'm super excited to learn more, of course, and then kind of share it with some of my audience. So why don't you kick us off and just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help people?
Yeah. So my name is Kendal Cann. I am the owner and founder of Privileged Planning. We are a wealth management firm that is owned and operated by women. I started it back in 2019 when I became a mom. My goal has always been to open my own firm, and I was working for a previous firm for several years when I started my career. And my favorite type of clients to work with were not necessarily retirees. That's really the most popular, profile that financial advisors go after. I really personally found great value in working with people who were about my age, maybe 10 to 15 years older, who had an entrepreneurial spirit. So really came into three categories as time passed on. We have a lot of divorcees, people who life takes them in a different direction, and now they have the funds and the control to kind of pursue their dreams, breakfast, or starting a new career. A lot of stay-at-home moms that jump into the workforce after a while. Secondly, we had a lot of small business owners, so people with 10 employees or less. That's another sweet spot that I really enjoy working in. And then lastly, I call them high earners who hate their job. I should probably work on finding a better descriptor for that. But so those are people that usually make six figures or more, and so they have the security of this high paying job. They're really miserable,
Mm.
but the security is what keeps them where they are. So they're too scared to leave because they've developed this skill set over a very long time, and they're just unhappy. So what sacrifices are they willing to make? What's it going to take to leave this job and pursue something that they're really passionate about? And we help them build that plan to accomplish that. Those are the three profiles of people that I really enjoy working with. And that's the foundation of privileged planning, is working with people who also have an entrepreneurial spirit and mindset and goals.
Yeah, and I love that so much. I think I was kind of sharing with you over the phone about this because I love the number one, the niches that you found that you really enjoyed working in. I love all of those groups so much. And I think it's really, really important for all of us in business. We want to help everyone we can, right? We see just anyone, we're like, oh, I can definitely help you. But I think as we grow in business, we realize that there's really nothing wrong with identifying those sweet spots and really finding like, oh, this is a niche I love working in. Like I've just found so much success, and I'm able to learn more and more with each new challenge and each new person in that same area. So I think it's awesome that you're able to really define that for your business and be like, hey, this is exactly who we love to help, and this is really where we excel at too, which I think is great that you're able to identify that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a work in progress, and it will continue to be for many years. So
For
that's where
sure.
we are right now.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear, how did you find out about BNI? Who was the first person that invited you?
See, I feel like I have a really boring story with BNI. So my practice was growing. I was working really hard. I was coming off of having two kids back to back, and I was like, gosh, I got to hustle. So I started really working on growing my practice and working with people that I wanted to work with. And as happens with any business that's growing, you find your clients have more demands. Now people need referral. They need an estate planning attorney. They need a CPA. They want a realtor. They want a bookkeeper working with business owners. They want a business lawyers. And I, as a smaller boutique firm, didn't have those connections. I didn't want to send them someone that is just someone I found on Google. You can't really even trust Google reviews or Amazon reviews anymore, it feels like. So how was I going to build this network, and how was I going to do it quickly, but also in a reliable and the safest way possible? So I started on Instagram, and I had my marketing team um, try to find local businesses in these different spaces that were about my age. You know, they weren't about to retire. They weren't just getting in, but they were young. They had, you know, another 20 years ahead of them in their respective industry. And I wanted to sit down and have lunch with these people and see if our visions aligned, see if that was someone I would be comfortable referring to my clients, and if they would be willing to reciprocate in that type of relationship. You know, I wasn't really looking to be the only one giving. I wanted to receive something out of it, ideally, right? I want to
Hmm.
grow too. And the first meeting I had was with Mark Moss, and he's a great estate planning attorney here locally. And his recommendation was you need to join BNI, and he's very involved in BNI. Definitely drinks the Kool Aid, as I would say. He recommended, you know, I get involved, but he also forewarned me that, you know, my position is a very saturated role. You know,
Sure.
there's not going to be many chapters that have financial advisor spot available. That's usually the financial advisor or the realtor are typically the people that start a chapter. So I was like, okay, whatever. But he introduced me to Stephanie Robinson, who is
Robinson.
the
Hmm.
Robinson, and she is in charge of our geographical area. And she said the same thing, you know, very directly. She's like, look, I don't think you're going to find one. You might want to consider starting one. And at that point, I was like, I had a 4 year old and a 3 year old. It's like, I'm not starting a chapter. This is whatever, moving on. And I think a week later, she reached out to me and was like, well, lucky you, there's one opening. Go sit in. And I never went to any other chapter. I never looked around. I never went and visited or really talked to anyone other than Mark and Stephanie. And I ended up getting that spot in
Wow.
BNI Net Worth.
That's amazing. I don't think that's boring at all. I think it's a great story of timing and I don't I was gonna say patience, but you know, it happened so fast actually.
Yeah, it happened quickly.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those timing things. It's funny how everything can align like that because, like you mentioned, like you hadn't really been thinking about BNI before. Mark mentioned it. You met with Stephanie, and like that was it. And then you found, well, not found, but they brought you BNI Net Worth. And you know, I know so many people in your chapter speak so highly of you as well. So it seems like it's working out for
Oh,
you.
yeah, it was a great connection and it's worked out and we're going on 3 years now, so I can't
Wow,
complain.
congrats. Do you have any BNI success stories that maybe come to your mind of something you're like, wow, I was able to do this for a client, or I was able to benefit, or someone else was able to benefit because of being in BNI?
I think in BNI, the best thing it's given to me, it's not my number one grower. Like I don't get a ton of referrals from BNI. I've gotten a few good ones,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been enough. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's more about, and the best value I've gotten from it is having that network. So like I have clients that are all over the country. Some are out of the country. And the fact that my clients in Texas, I can be like, you know what? Let me look in my BNI network and see who's in your local area. And then you can interview them and see if they're a good fit. Like I haven't personally worked with them, but the fact that they're in this same group says something about their business, says that they're
Right.
trying because we're held to this standard. And I explain to clients that's a good place to start. So
Yeah.
just that alone is valuable enough for me to stay in. I'm also in
Wow.
leadership, so that makes it easier as well.
Yeah. It's so great that you know, BNI is international, but there's that weight to our name where it's like we see other BNI members, and we may not know them personally, but we at least know that they're invested enough in their business to be a part, to show up every week, and to really try as much to hold up to that, you know, our Palms report, our start, what's it called, traffic light system, and all those things. And I think that says something, even though we don't know them, we don't really know how they do business. And like you mentioned, your clients can go check them out and interview them for themselves as well.
Yeah. So that's been a big deal for me, and I'll continue to sing BNI's graces because of that.
That's amazing. You said you were on leadership. What's your role right now?
So I'm the secretary treasurer of BNI Net Worth. So I handle the speaker rotation. I collect dues, which was a big deal right now in January. We're
Oh,
definitely
yes.
running after some people. But other than that, my job's really not that difficult. I don't have that VP role. That's definitely the hardest one out of all three.
For
But it does
sure.
help because if you meet certain stipulations each year with your group, as far as numbers and recruitment, then you don't have to pay for your BNI dues. So it's, if you don't have to pay for to be in the group per se, except your chapter dues, it makes it worth the referrals
Yeah.
don't matter as much to me. It's more the community.
Well, that's great. I wanted to ask you because I know leadership can be very daunting for a lot of people, whether you've been in BNI for a few years or maybe you're very new. What would you say to those people who are like they've maybe thought about leadership or they're kind of scared, like, oh, it sounds like it's going to be, my fifth job because I'm already doing too much.
It depends on your role. So I think that if you want more exposure, but you don't want to necessarily put yourself in a position where you have to be the bad guy, membership committee is a big one. Mentor coordinator is a great one, although I do think there's a little more work with mentor coordinator than being on membership per se.
Sure.
And I don't know if you're familiar with membership, but that's where you're really you're voting on new applications, you're looking at current people in the group and renewals. My job really isn't that difficult. I'm in a smaller group, so there's only about 24, 25 of us at any given time. So I think that it's more manageable. I couldn't imagine being the secretary treasurer of a group that has over 100. So maybe though they have something different to say than I do, but for
Sure.
me it hasn't been that demanding. I think president is more of an undertaking, right? You're definitely you have to be at the meetings, right? Attendance is almost not like you have to be there.
Right.
VP is a lot of work. So I would say it depends on how many more hours you want to add to your BNI week, right? Do you
hmm
really just want one, maybe two on average, or are you willing to give four, maybe five? Then you look at some of the more demanding roles. But
Yeah.
definitely, as far as exposure and getting involved, I think it's always a great move to get involved in leadership in anything you do and dedicate your time to.
Yeah, and I think a big part about being a part of leadership, you mentioned exposure, and I think another part is it really grows your dedication to the chapter, as well as being seen as on leadership as contributing to the chapter. I think it helps yourself. It helps your own self-esteem when it comes to BNI, really getting involved. Because I know a lot of people are like, well, BNI didn't work for me, and maybe I just didn't love the chapter. But I think the best way to experience BNI is going full speed ahead, just immersing yourself completely and then really getting the picture there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Awesome. Well, Kendall, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. I absolutely love what you're doing, and am so, so grateful you came on just to share a little bit about your passions, as well as your BNI story, which I think is really fun for your all credit due.
Awesome. Thanks, Macy. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to everyone watching, I really appreciate you as well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.